Good evening and welcome to The Tonight Show tonight with your host, that's me, Jonathan Pelham, here on the Jonathan Pelham Tonight Show. Tonight we have Jimmy Fleetwood McElroy to talk about his new song, the Sea Doll Song. Jimmy!
Woo! Alright, baby, yeah, here we go. The Sea Doll Song, new single out on Spotify. Let's talk about it, baby.
Let's talk about the song. Jimmy,
Yeah.
Tell me about Sea Doll. What do you know? What's happening?
So Sea Doll was a treaty that was signed, well, not really signed, it was adopted in 1979 by the United Nations. That's UN abbreviated for all of you ignorants out there that don't know. And it was really taken in form in 1981. It's it's just one of the most progressive pieces of human rights literature in the history of human rights documents.
That's cool.
And so I wrote a song about it.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so basically, Sea Doll's really cool, right? That's a good thing. Sea Doll is cool, but there's still a lot of problems with it, and so I wrote a song about some of the problems.
Like what? Tell us.
From what I've researched, there's been problems with enforcement. And specifically when I say that, there's been problems with the lack of a central and sovereign governing body. There's been the lack of a specific standard that needs to be met. And there's been the lack of, there's too much reliance on individuals and individual groups to utilize the enforcement protocols that are just given within Sea Doll. And so, just in summation, there's no central governing body. Which might sound, when I say this, I mean there's other governing bodies out there that talk about human rights. Which this might sound like a good thing, and it is a good thing that other people are concerned about it, but there's no one body that can say what does and doesn't go. And then past that, there's no specific standard that has to be met because human rights is hard to quantify. So it's hard to say on a scale of 1 to 10, Peru, you're doing an 8, you're doing a 9. That'd be great, but how do you put human rights into a mathematical numerical scale? And then past that, there's too much reliance on individuals to utilize protocols. And when I say protocols, these are additions to the document that allow for enforcement to take place to be used. Because, for instance, we're talking about, how does a woman in South Sudan take advantage of a UN protocol to, sanction her government saying I'm being discriminated against? And so this is what the song's about.
Cool, and we're going to talk more about it tonight
Definitely.
here on The Tonight Show. We'll see you after the break. Good evening, and welcome back to The Tonight Show tonight with me, your host, Jonathan Pelham. During the break, Mr. McElroy had some issues and he had to step out for a moment. But the Sea Doll song is what we were talking about, and we were talking about some of the problems with Sea Doll. With that, a hobby of mine is researching Sea Doll. So we've had some questions come in over the last 5-10 minutes while we were on break, and I'm going to read and answer some of those questions while we have an opportunity to. So Bobby from Illinois, this is to you. What practices have been found to work best in adoption from a federal level down to a day-to-day activities within a local level? How are transnational ideas such as human rights approaches to violence against women adopted in local social settings? How are global ideas about women's rights translated into local context? Well, Bobby, a crucial part of the answer to this question is vernacularization. Vernacularization is the process by which international norms and ideas are localized or adopted into local context. With that, more explicitly, this comes from translators who may be in the form of local activists, NGO staff, social movement activists, human rights lawyers, or academics. These people have one foot in the transnational community, but also one foot in your community at home. So with that, they are able to bring these international ideas down to a local level and help implement them. Secondly, we have Sally from Cincinnati. Sally, as a key international instrument that addresses the rights of women, how is Sea Doll adopted from an international level down to a local level successfully? For example, the implementation of Sea Doll by the mayor of San Francisco, which required the city of San Francisco to implement Sea Doll principles at a local level, worked well. How? Sally, the implementation of human rights and how they are successful on a local level comes down to a few things as I've mentioned. In a community, it helps if there's already awareness of human rights issues, some level of commitment to implementing these human rights, and an active community on human rights social justice activists. Yes, that makes sense. Further, this city was successful partly due to several factors, an institutional framework from which they could work within. By this, I mean they had key actors in key positions to help move this legislation along. San Francisco even has a status of women department that promotes these types of issues and further was in place to push this legislation to a local level. Those types of things help bringing this international issue down to a local context. We'll see you later. And welcome back to The Tonight Show with me, your host, Jonathan Pelham. Here on The Tonight Show, Mr. Fleetwood McElroy, whatever his last name is, isn't here because he's not here. But we have SungMin. SungMin is instrumental in the creation of the Sea Doll song, and he is a member of the band. SungMin is going to tell us about his research that was important to the creation of the Sea Doll song. SungMin, tell us.
So research that I found is pertinent to the compliance to CEDAW. And within the literature of compliance, there's something called a reservation. So reservations are anything that that excludes or modifies the legal effect of certain provisions of a treaty on a certain state. And for CEDAW, there's 168 states that are party to CEDAW, and 55 of them have made reservations. And they're based on either Article 29 or on account of Sharia law. So Article 29 is the arbitration provision, and this reservation allows states to avoid disputes with the state or ICJ over interpretation or implementation of CEDAW. The second category that I talked about is states that have made reservations on account of Sharia law, and they usually do it to exclude themselves from Article 2 and Article 16. Now this is kind of a problem because Article 2 and Article 16 are considered core provisions of CEDAW. Specifically Article 16, which talks about family and marriage law. Now, and another problem is that CEDAW has the most reservations out of any other human rights treaty. So the debate over this, that started from the conception of CEDAW, is Sweden and Denmark versus Japan. Sweden and Denmark say to these reserving states to comply more to CEDAW or to just withdraw from the treaty. And then Japan says to keep these reserving states on account of the universality of the treaty, and that CEDAW doesn't have clear criterion anyways for what constitutes as compatibility or incompatibility with CEDAW, with these reservations.
And that's all in the song.
Yes.
And we're going to hear the song coming up here soon on the finale of The Tonight Show tonight. If Mr. Fleetwood McElroy gets back from the bar, we'll see you then. And tonight on The Tonight Show, it's the finale, the Sea Doll song.
Well, women, they are people too. Used to treat them just like me and you. Not cause CEDAW tells us to, just cause it's the right thing to do. Treat the women equally, they've got every right to be just as free as you and me, as free as every guy that pees. Standing up, femininity is a spectrum. If you disagree, shove it up your rectum. There's not one thing that's feminine. That's a social construct that's made by men. So screw you and the patriot. You think that I've gone too far, but I guess one day you'll have to say the way it is ain't the only way. 'Cause the way it is sucks sometimes, especially for women. Especially for women. Whoa, oh, oh,
Thank you. Good night. We love you. Shout out to Carol Cone and Valerie Hudson and Marianne Gallagher. Woo! Rock and roll, baby!